A lot of people today wonder how New York City fell into decline back in the 1970s, the 1980s, and the 1990s. And the main reason why New York City fell into an economic decline was because of policies enacted by Democrats like your Bill de Blasio and the New York City Council. Recently, the Mayor Bill de Blasio and the New York City Council decided they want to enact a 5-cent fee on shoppers who decide to get paper or plastic bags at local retailers. And this is the kind of policy that pretty much will do long term damage to New York's economy. Why? Because when you charge these types of fees, it's nickel and diming your economy into ruin. This is the type of policy that pretty much alienates people and gives them no incentive to go shopping in a place like New York City. A lot of people would think, oh, it's just 5 cents, but 5 cents really adds up long term, especially for poor individuals and working class individuals. Because I worked in retail, and an order for a shopping of bags with 5 bags, usually it's 5 bags for $100 grocery order, that turns into about 50 cents because you need to double that plastic on that bag, on those 5 grocery bag orders. And that, again, 50 cents. And that over time turns into dollars. And that's the type of long term impact nickel and diming has on people. Now, your city council and Mayor Bill de Blasio say that will give people incentive to go out and buy reusable bags. I will disagree on that because I've got reusable bags, and most times, a lot of times, I forget to bring them. Again, that's going to give people less incentive to go shopping at places, and it's going to do damage to your long-term economy, especially when you compound this same policy with Governor Cuomo's recent plan to raise the minimum wage to $15. This does not help your economy long term. All it does is lead to inflation and long-term damage because you're taking money out of your economy, especially when you think about the long-term history of these type of policies. Now, back in from the 1970s to the 1990s, a lot of people, thanks to New York City's mega sales taxes of 8.25%, what they did was they got on a bus and went all the way to New Jersey, or they got in cars and went all the way to New Jersey, and they did their shopping there where they didn't have to pay any sales tax. Then they rode across the bridge right back to New York. And this is what this type of policy gives people incentive to do. It gives them an incentive to, instead of shopping in New York, they take their money and their revenue and they give it to New Jersey. And this is the same type of pattern that can reestablish itself thanks to these types of policies, because that's what people did, again, back in from the 1970s to the 1990s, when they wanted to go shopping for things like clothes. What they did, they was go and then get on the bus, or they would go drive to New Jersey to the malls there, and New Jersey benefited from the revenue from New York City implementing a policy like this 5-cent fee for bags. And what are people going to do now? They're going to say, I'm going to go to Jersey so I don't have to deal with this. Or they're just going to go online to places like Amazon.com or other online retailers and then order their merchandise there, leaving a lot of local retailers to suffer because there is no incentive for them to go to the store and spend 5 cents on a bag when it's just not worth it. Now, your city council and the mayor say this is going to change people's habits to and help the environment. Well, I look at this policy and it's going to change people's habits. Again, it's going to lead to people either ordering online or going to another state. And that's not going to help New York's economy. In fact, it's not going to help local retailers. All it's going to do is put a lot of local retailers' businesses in jeopardy, because if I don't have to go to if I don't have to pay 5 cents for a bag, then I'm going to go someplace else. Moreover, if I have my own bags, it's going to lead to other problems, because in a lot of stores here in New York City, a lot of stores have bag check policies. So that business is pretty much going to wind up losing almost all of its business, because people, again, aren't going to have an incentive to shop there, because they're going to look at that nickel and dime and say, you know what, I'm going to go try to find this at an online retailer. So that's not going to help local business. When I look at this policy, I look at another policy that reminds me of those that were implemented back from the 70s to the 90s that pretty much destroyed New York's overall economy and prevented people from having an incentive to open businesses in New York. Because when I look at this policy and that $15 an hour minimum wage, I look at it as the nail in the coffin for New York's economy, because this does not give people an incentive to open up businesses. It does not give people an incentive to shop in New York City. In fact, it's the type of policy that drives away travel, tourism, and destroys an business, a city's economic system. And these are the type of policies that Democrats like to implement, talking about how it's going to change the environment, but all it does is destroy the environment for business. Because when you implement these nickel and dime policies, all they do is really alienate people, especially again when you compound it with a $15 an hour minimum wage for business. And then for the consumer, it's compounded with the highest rents in the country, the highest electric rates in the country, and the highest taxes in the country. And sooner or later, these types of policies become like the straws that break the camel's back, and people say it's enough is enough, and they decide instead of wanting to come to New York City, they want to move away from New York City. And I saw this happen as I grew up here in New York City as a kid, and I see the same pattern getting ready to happen all over again. Because there's nothing that drives economic flight like high taxes, and high fees to live in a city. Eventually, you reach a breaking point. I mean, we have in Manhattan $3,000 a month rents, in Brooklyn $2,000 a month rents, and even in the Bronx starting to get towards this rate. And you look at these policies, and eventually what goes up will eventually come down. And when you have policies like a 5-cent so-called fee, which is basically just a repackaged tax, again, you have less incentive for people to go shopping in New York City, and you have even less incentive for business owners to open businesses, because all these fees pretty much, again, were the thing that choked this city to death, almost to death, back again from the 1970s to the 1990s, and made it into a wasteland that was virtually uninhabitable. And I'd hate to see that happen again to New York City, but with Democrats like your Bill de Blasio and the city council thinking short term, they're not thinking about the long term damage that they're getting ready to do to this city with these kinds of policies.